In this tutorial, we'll be covering how to deploy an app service web app using the Azure command line interface. Azure App Service lets you run and deploy HTTP-based applications on Azure managed VM instances. You don't have to manage these virtual machines at all. You can just instead focus your time on your web application. We'll go through how to deploy an app service web app using the command line interface, and we'll be making two different types of web apps. The first type, we will use a predefined runtime environment, which will be a Node.js version 20 LTS. And the second application, we will get it deployed as a container image, and we'll get that container image from a public repository within Docker Hub, and we'll be using the Nginx container image. So let's get started running our first web service app as a code-based deployment one. So this is where we need to set up the runtime environment first. And if you want to get a list of all the runtime environments, you can use the AZ web app list-runtimes command. So I'll run that now if you want to get a list of all the different runtimes. And as you can see, there's a different list for Linux versus Windows. And when you create your app service plan, you'll need to mention whether you're going to be using Windows or a Linux operating system. So those are different runtimes we can use. We'll be using the Node runtime, and we'll be using Linux. So let's get these resources created now. We'll start with the Azure resource group. So you'll need to log in to do this first. So you'll need an Azure account and you'll need an Azure subscription. Make sure you take care of that before you do this tutorial. Then you can use the AZ login command and select the relevant subscription that you want to be using for creating these resources. I've already done that, so I'm not going to show that in this tutorial. Next, we'll create the resource group. So you can do that using the AZ group create command. And I'll be creating a resource group in the location East US. Okay, so that's been created. Next, we'll create the app service plan. So you need to create an app service plan before you can create your web app. And the app service plan determines what sort of compute resources that you have access to for your web apps. You can have an app service plan and you can have multiple web apps using that same app service plan. The different resources that will be available within an app service plan includes things like the number of VM instances that you'll have access to, the size of these VM instances, whether they're small, medium, or large, the operating system of these VM instances, are they Linux or are they Windows, the region where they're located, and the pricing tier. And that pricing tier unlocks certain features and different levels of performance. So what we'll do now is we'll create the app service plan. So I'm just using this command here. I'm just copying it over from my blog post. So as you can see, there's a couple of different parameters here. So we're using AZ app service plan create. And the parameters that we need to set include things such as the resource group, the name of your app service plan that you'll be creating, the number of workers. So this is the number of VMs that will be created. So we just need a one. What is the SKU you'll be using? So this is the pricing plan tier. I'm using a basic pricing tier, so that's B1. To say that it's Linux, you just need to say is Linux, that's the flag for that. And then you can specify a location as well, which I'm using East US. So it looks like that's been created successfully. You can verify that using the app service plan list command. So I'll run that now. And I'll pass the resource group as a parameter. And it will show me that I've got one app service plan here. And you can also use the app service plan show command, passing the name of the app plan as a parameter and the resource group as a parameter as well. And you can get back that same information about your app service plan. So now let's deploy this web application. Now this web application is based on the Hello World example from the express.js documentation. So express.js is a popular web application framework for Node.js if you're not familiar with that. And we've got two files that we will be creating, an index.js and a package.json. Package.json sort of highlights what dependencies you need in your application and some metadata about your application as well. And the index.js is basically your server-side code for setting up this web server on Express. So you can copy these files over from the blog post, but I'm just in that directory now with those files. So if I do an ls command, I can see, well, 3 files. One is for Git, which is just to ignore certain files I don't want checked into the code repository, but the index.js file, and you've got the package.json file. So these have been copied over from the blog post. What I'll do now is run a npm install just to download the dependencies, because I'll need those to deploy them to the app service web app. So that's complete now. And if I do another ls, I should see the node modules directory as well. So we're ready to deploy the web application now. So I'll be using the az web app up command to do this. And let me just run this command now. So you can see different parameters here in the az web app up command. You can see the name of your web app. I'm calling it Cloud Engineer Skills Node App. You've got the resource group as well. And you've got the name of your plan, your app service plan, and which runtime environment are you going to be using. So you saw above, we were using a Linux environment. So I needed to grab the relevant node 20 environment from the Linux section. And that is just here. Okay, so it looks like it's been created there. It's actually given us a URL for the application if we wanted to check that out. Another way to get that URL is to use the web app list command. So I'll try that right now. So az web app list, and we're also specifying a resource group and a query. And that query includes things such as the name of the web app, the host name, and what is the current state of the web app. So running that command, you've got the host name there as well. You can put that into a browser. You also got the name of the web application and its current state. You can get all this information from the portal as well if you wanted to do that. So what we'll do next is we'll grab that URL and put it into a browser. Okay, and we can see hello world, and that was taken from the index.js file running on the server. If you wanted to see these Azure resources in the portal as well, let's have a look at that right now. So under resource groups, we'll refresh that and we can see that we've got that resource group that we created. And within that resource group, we've got 2 resources. The first is the app service. The second one there is the app service plan. We can see that they're all placed in the East US location. The resource group, the app service, and the app service plan, they're all in the same location. And if we have a look at that app service plan, we can see information about that app service plan, what pricing tier is it using, how many instances has it got, resource level metrics, you can see that as well here. And if we go into the application, so this is the web app, and we can see the information about that web app as well. We can see when the last deployment took place, and we can see the default domain that's been set up here as well. We can also see information about the web application. Its published model is code. Its runtime stack is Node 20 LTS. So that's the first example where we're using a Node application using the publishing model of code. So let's try using a container and deploying that to an app service web app. So we won't delete this resource group at the moment. We'll keep using it for the tutorial. And at the end, we'll delete that resource group. And we also won't create a new app service plan. Let's use the same app service plan. Like I mentioned, you can use the same app service plan for multiple web apps. We can still use Linux for the next web app, so we won't change that. So let's deploy this web app. And we're not using the web app up command this time. We'll be using the az web app create command. So let's run this command now. So we got some parameters here. The first is the parameter M, which is going to be the name of the web app. The next is G for the resource group. After that, we've got the parameter P, which is going to be the name of the app service plan. We're using the same one we created before, Node App Plan. And finally, we've got the parameter I, which is going to be the image. And in this case, we're using the image nginx from Docker Hub, which is a public repository we can use. So we'll run that now and give it a chance to create that web app for us. Okay, so we're getting some output here, and we can just review that quickly. We can see host name here. So we can see it's called Cloud Engineer Skills Container. So why don't we have a look in the list command and see, we want to get some information about the different host names and the state of the web app. So let's run that command now. So we should get two results here. One for the one that we deployed before, which is the Node application, and the other one here, which is we just deployed then, which is the container application. So we've got different host names for these two different web apps. So we'll grab this host name here and we'll put it in a browser. Okay, and we can see the standard screen from Nginx indicating that the web server is working for us. So that's two different ways to deploy an app service web app using the Azure command line interface. We don't need these resources anymore, so let's delete them by deleting the resource group with the az group delete command, passing the resource group name using their name parameter. And if we say yes to that, that will delete all the resources that we created under that resource group. So that's it for this tutorial. If you got any value of it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Thanks very much for watching.